Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva.
and this is Twisted Listeners, a podcast about murder.
And this.
And this is a new topic. It's a topic I chose. It
Hmm.
came to me in a moment, and I did not let it escape. Oftentimes, I will think of something that I consider to be a really cool topic, and then I forget it. And I promise myself, oh, you won't forget that. You'll remember it in an hour when you get somewhere where you can write it down. And by that time, it's so far fucking gone that I can never think of it again. But this one stayed with me, and I think it's because it was extra cool. This is cases where people were convicted of murder even though there was no body.
Yes.
These are interesting cases because you didn't used to be able to convict someone of murder if there wasn't a body.
Yeah, it used to be impossible in a lot of places, and there had to be laws saying it was possible.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was an interesting um, topic. Do we know who is the first one ever on the list? Do we know?
I'm not sure. I'm sure it's on like the Wikipedia for murders without a body or convictions without a body, which is where I pulled all of our cases
Oh,
from.
did you? So the
Yeah.
very first one in the US was in 1955. Leonard Ewing Scott was the first person in the US convicted of a no-body murder. His wife, Evelyn, was last
Mm,
seen at their Bel Air, California home in 1955. So he was the first one to go down. The law is as old as both Disneyland and my dad.
mm,
Or I don't even know if it's a law, but the first conviction is the same age.
55. Yeah.
1955. That was the year Disneyland opened and the
Hmm.
year my dad was born. A lot of things happened in 1955.
Yeah,
So there it is. But it's always a lot harder to get a murder conviction if you don't have a body. So I thought it
it
would be
is.
interesting to explore these cases and kind of talk about how these convictions came to be, even though there was no body. So
It's a very good topic.
yeah. Is there
Yeah.
anything else we want to talk about? I always feel like there's so much in the true crime world, and then we get on here and my brain just goes to mush.
No, my mom, who's getting into true crime, which is cute, just
Aw.
told me that there is a crazy ass trial in like the Boston area for this
Mm-hmm.
vicious murder of a little girl named Harmony Montgomery. Have you followed that?
Yes, I have. Her fucking
Okay.
dad did it.
Yeah. I haven't literally seen anything about that until today. So I was kind of like
Really?
catching up. Yeah, my mom was like,
Oh
I
my God.
follow it. So
I may have even posted something on our Instagram about it at some
mm,
point. Like, it's
okay.
so fucked up. I'm so
Yeah.
glad they
As
finally
a
got that motherfucker.
as a person with a baby now, I'm like, new. Not that I was ever cool with it, but I'm like newly astounded by how people kill their babies. Like
Mm-hmm.
pretty, like people that torture their kids. It's like a very common
Which is
thing. Question mark.
it just really goes to show how fucking depraved our society is. Like, there are
Um.
points where I feel like Ollie makes me like I could put my hand through a wall, but I would
Yeah.
never touch him. Like, it
No. Yeah. You
never
punch something else.
yeah, it
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
crosses
Yeah.
my mind to, like, actually hurt him. Like,
Right.
that is just, like it's weird how it's just not, like, an area in my brain. Like, it cannot happen.
But no. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's most people.
thank God, but not enough
But
people.
like, I mean, and like people like torture their kids, like Gabriel Fernandez. There's like so many cases like this. It's astounding,
Yeah, I mean,
how shitty people are.
I've cried just from, like, seeing my kid get, like, a shot, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
just knowing that your child is in pain is, like, the worst fucking feeling. But yeah,
It's wild.
that guy is a complete piece of shit, and I
When
cannot
people say stuff
wait,
like deep
like
down, like people are good, or like, trying to say that the human condition is that we're like good essentially and
those people
poor.
don't have a true crime podcast.
Yeah, I'm like,
Like,
no, I think the opposite. I
I
think we're
think
all shitty and like
yeah, we have
the
to
good
fight to
people
be
are the
good.
exception. Yeah.
Yeah, and even those of us, like, we have to, like it's easy to do bad things. It's sometimes the easier thing to do, so to not do them, you have to really work hard, and it sucks. And it's often
Oh my gosh.
there's no payoff for it. So,
I
oh
got
my
a
God, you
kitty
have a cat
joining
in your
me.
lap.
Yes.
Cutie.
Yes. Leaving my husband with my baby, and I am having some quality cat snuggles.
That's
This is
amazing.
my me time right now, Cindy. This is it.
Oh,
This is it.
I'm
That's all I
sorry
get.
that it's wrapped up in true crime, but
It's okay. This is my my self-care.
your self-care. I was just gonna say that. That's so funny.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I mean, I enjoyed it's so fucked up to say I enjoyed researching this case. But you know what I mean? Like it feels good when you get good information on a case and you can present something that you're proud of, you know. So
Yeah.
hopefully this is a good way to spend some of your self-care time. And
Yes.
speaking of which, since I chose, you're gonna go first, right?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. So mine is a case I think was on like mysterious disappearances, or it was on a few other lists of ours, and it never got picked. So I'm
Oh.
excited. Um, it's actually renowned, like was famous for a long time as a mysterious disappearance, and only very recently in 2022 did it get added to the this list, essentially.
That's so cool that
Hmm.
you're doing this. I
Yeah,
mean, it's terrible, but
yeah,
like it's cool that you found such a
and you
recent
know I
one.
love a mysterious disappearance,
I know you do.
so
You do.
pick
And
me
I
that hair out of my
love
mouth.
I love a conclusion to a mysterious disappearance. That's my favorite
Here
part.
we go. So you got it.
Yeah, we're both
Although it's
happy.
really not that mysterious, but it is in some ways. Okay, okay,
Okay.
okay, okay.
All right.
So this is a case of Zebb Quinn, which is a cool
Okay.
name.
Mhm.
He disappeared, or we'll talk about what happened to him in 2000 in Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay.
Zebb was 18 at this time, born in 1981.
Hey, older than
Uh,
me.
mhm. He was from Asheville. He had dealt with a learning disability, and he was very smart and he was very well liked. Everyone said he was basically a really good kid, like just super lovable. Everyone has nothing but good things to say about Zeb. You can kind of see it in his face. Like he just looks like a very earnest, wholesome young man.
Mhm.
He was in ROTC at his high school, which I believe is like a military placement thing.
Mhm.
So he was planning on going into the military. He was also really into his job at the electronics department at Walmart.
Mhm. Oh,
That's
Walmart.
that's what
Mhm.
he's up to.
Wait,
He's
Diva,
also
I
really
covered this.
what?
I did, but I covered it
No.
for the other murder. Anyway, we'll stop right there
Oh, oh,
because
oh, oh,
I only I did not.
oh no, wait.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
But it doesn't matter because this was more of like a footnote when I did it. So
Okay.
you go.
In my case, the other murder is a footnote.
The footnote. Yeah. So
So
this is great. No, no,
okay,
no. This is awesome. I love this.
okay. No, I thought of that. Okay, never mind.
I was like, why does
Okay.
his name sound
I'll
so
circle. I'll,
familiar?
I'll
And I was like,
mention it
wait a
when I
minute.
get to that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway,
When
go
I get
ahead.
to that, the other part that you covered, I'll mention it
Hmm.
of
Okay.
why. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's not a total repeat. Jesus.
No, not at
At
all. Not
least.
at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
So January 2nd, 2000, Zeb was leaving his job from his Walmart, and was going to job. And he was going to go with his coworker, an older guy named Robert Jason Owens, to I guess they say Leicester, but it's like in the British way you'd say Leicester, but I don't think
Hmm.
they say it that way
Mm,
because it's North Carolina. So I
okay.
think you say Leicester with the hard C. Sorry, British
Oh,
people.
yeah. We fuck
Yeah,
everything up.
not the
Sorry.
British way.
No.
But he was going with Robert Owens to look at a car that he was interested in buying after work. They were going to drive it around and assess the car and potentially purchase it. Um, so surveillance cameras would capture the two men at a gas station buying snacks at 9:15 p.m. They got
Hmm.
off work not long before, so that's probably their first stop en route to the potential car buying experience.
Hmm.
And that's it. So Zeb disappears essentially from that point on, and the following day, his mom files an official missing persons report. The way Zeb's car is later found at a nearby barbecue restaurant a few days after he goes missing is very suspicious.
Okay.
So his car appears. He didn't buy the new car. This is his original car.
Okay.
Um, and the headlights were on. There was in pink lipstick, someone had scrawled on the side a pair of lips with two exclamation marks on either side.
Okay.
Um, okay. Just I'm pausing there for dramatic effect. And there was a puppy, a black lab mix puppy inside of the car.
I remember that. That was so
Yeah.
fucking weird.
Yes. Okay, maybe this is what you were talking about. Okay, sorry. I was like,
Mhm.
wasn't there another case with a puppy randomly inside a
I
car?
think yeah, it was this one, but,
Maybe it
like
was, yeah, from this.
yeah.
Thankfully the puppy was fine, and it was actually later adopted by one of the investigators on the case, which is cute.
Oh, that is really cute.
Um, it was in the car for a few days, so that sucks for the puppy. So he's
Ooh,
probably really hungry and stuff, but
very
he was fine.
thirsty, probably.
Yes, but by all accounts, I couldn't see any. I didn't see a single account that said like, "Oh, Zeb was that was his dog," or he was adopting a puppy or something. It seemed like the puppy was like left there by the killer, or
Mysterious?
yeah,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
planted, or in some way associated with the person who left the car.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, whether they abandoned the dog or it was some kind of like message or something. It's hard. I'll talk about it a little bit later.
Right, okay.
Um, they also found in the car a hotel key card to an unknown hotel, and a jacket that was not Zeb's, and some various drink bottles. So it's like a whole medley of like weird ass shit.
Mhm,
Um, when police interview Robert Owens, he says that here's his story, of his first story of that night. He said that they left the gas station, they got their snacks, and they were going to go look at the car when Zeb flashes lights to signal like we're pulling over. And after they
mhm,
both pulled over, he said he had to make a phone call at a nearby payphone, which he does. And he then returns to Robert Owens and seemed frantic after having this phone call, like desperate and like kind of panicked. And he then quickly essentially like cancels their plans and leaves in a hurry. And as he's driving away, kind of like frantically and distracted, he actually rear ends Owens's truck. Then he jumps out and kind of says like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the damages, but I really have to go." So he jumps back in and he leaves. And that's the
mhm.
last he sees Zeb, according to Robert Owens.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Um, Robert Owens then reportedly later that night did go to an urgent care for broken ribs and some kind of head injury, but he says it's from a totally separate car accident,
mhm,
not being rear-ended
mhm.
by Zeb. And there was no official accident report though for this accident, and the injuries reportedly later on people would say that it didn't match up with a car accident. So like it was strange,
Okay.
more like a fight, perhaps.
Mhm, mhm, possibly.
2 days after Zeb disappeared, the Walmart got a phone call from a mysterious man who said he was Zeb, and called in sick to work. The coworker who answered the call knew Zeb and immediately was like, and said would say later that she knew immediately that's not his voice.
Yeah, that
Like
was not
I
him.
know him.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's not what he sounds like. And so when police looked into it, she immediately called the police and was like, someone just fake called in as Zeb.
Mhm.
And when they looked into it, police found that the call originated at a specific Volvo plant where Robert Owens also.
Ah, so
Interesting.
weird.
Yeah.
Weird that it would be from his work.
Yeah. Under pressure, Robert Owens actually admits to making that call, but he says it was because Zeb called him and separately asked him to call in sick on his behalf.
Why not just call work directly, Zeb?
I don't
It
know.
feels like a pretty obvious question.
Interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the investigation obviously is pretty focused on Robert Owens, but they also find that Zeb was very involved with a girl named Misty Taylor, a young woman, who was in perfectly, keeping with last week's theme. She was already in a relationship with a
Oh,
abusive, shitty ass dude named Wesley Smith,
okay.
with whom she had a young child. I didn't get his or her age, but she's like a fucking like living with a dude with whom she has a kid, and then she's fully dating Zeb. Like, so
See, I didn't know that part, that she was, like,
yeah,
already
yeah.
yeah. Huh, okay.
This was a new relationship, and they had only known each other a few weeks, and it seems like kind of an infatuation that was more heavily weighted on Zeb's side. He's really, really, really obsessed with her, and Misty was
Uh-huh.
kind of like lukewarm on it, I think.
Okay.
And Zeb was talking about her a lot at work, reportedly. So he's not keeping his mouth shut. He's telling everyone who will listen how much he's like into Misty. Um,
Oh, he
and
just
this is, I
isn't
think,
really yeah.
one of his first relationships. He's like very like a baby, you
He's
know.
a yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly, a witness sighting reported someone driving Zebb's car the night of later that night of his disappearance in downtown Asheville, and they described the person driving as a woman who fit the description of Misty Taylor. So just put that in your back pocket.
I mean, but to be fair, isn't she just like a blonde white woman?
Yeah.
And we're in like
I
North
mean,
Carolina. I feel like that's just like
it's interesting that it's a woman at all, for sure.
right. No,
Given
absolutely.
what else we hear about the case.
Right. That
So
alone is weird. I agree.
it's weird. So phone records would also reveal that Zebb did get a phone call roughly when Owen said he did, the one that like he had to take, right? Or yeah, the or he called from the payphone.
Hmm.
Um, but they would say he got that phone call, they would trace it, and it came from his aunt's home. And at that night, his aunt actually wasn't home, but she had her home broken into. And
Oh.
framed photos and other items were moved around, but nothing was taken. And if this wasn't
Mm.
weird enough, this fucking case, his aunt was gone because she was at having dinner with Misty's mom,
What the fuck?
and her
This
house
is
was broken into. Yeah, everyone
this
knows everyone. Everyone's hanging out with everyone. It's very weird.
yeah, this is a weird
Um,
and like twisty fucking
it is. In 2015, so boop, 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 15 years have passed. Investigators were still looking at Zebb's murder actively, never like really went cold. They managed to conduct a search of Robert James Owens's residence, and this happened because a few months prior, he was actually arrested for the murders of J.T. Schoen. Is that how you pronounce
I
it, Cindy?
think so,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
Codd and his pregnant wife, Christy Schoen Codd, who, and this is where I thought this sounded familiar, and I was right because it was on like reality TV, like murders.
Hmm.
That's when we did
Yep.
it, right?
Yeah.
They had randomly been on the show Food Net. She had randomly been on the show Food Network Star,
Yeah, the
and
next
that's
Food Network
why.
star. Hmm.
Yes, that's
Hmm.
why you covered it, and this
Yep.
sounded familiar. So Mr. Fucking Robert Owens was in 2017 sentenced to between 60 to 75 years in prison for those murders. And just as a quick reminder, you can go back and listen to Cindy's in-depth coverage, or I will just tell you very quickly what happened.
Hmm.
Um, he murdered the couple, and correct me if I'm wrong because you might remember it better. But I have that he murdered the couple by running them over at their home. Um, he claimed that this was
Hmm.
accidental, and
Hmm.
then he dismembered and subsequently burned their bodies. And again, she's like 5 months pregnant. It's disgusting.
He accidentally ran them over, so instead of calling the police and being like, "Oh my god, there was a
Yeah.
horrific accident," he dismembers and burns them.
Yes. He staged everything to look like a robbery gone wrong, and he took stuff from their house and their wallets, so he does actually rob them as well.
Yep.
And he even went so far as to take Christie's phone and send texts to their family saying they were sick to try to like create some kind of dumb explanation for them like being
Not being
gone or
around for a
not
while.
replying.
Yeah.
Yeah. He reportedly then sold some of that stolen stuff and used the money to take his wife out to dinner, which
Oh my god.
romantic. It's Valentine's Day, right? So cute.
Wait, can I
Um,
also point out that the texting of the family is very similar to like Zeb calling into work? It's like the same trick.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
You
Same
know?
vibe.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
doing the same thing over.
Yes. So under Robert Owen's house, they found, quote, fabric, leather materials, and unknown hard fragments, kind of implying bone fragments.
Hmm.
Um, they also found plastic bags of lime and mortar mix, which lime is used to like dissolve
Yeah.
bodies, right?
Hmm. It
Um,
can, yeah.
shortly after all these discoveries, Robert Owens is charged by a grand jury with the first-degree murder of Zebb Quinn.
Woo!
Um, yes, the trial was then postponed several times, including several times for COVID reasons. Yeah,
Hmm.
so I think 2015 is the initial, or no, 2017 is the initial charges.
Yeah.
2015. I want to say 2015. Anyway, but it just sort of languishes in legal bureaucracy forever.
Hmm.
And then in July 2022, investigators officially announced that Robert James Owens in 2018 had confessed, they just didn't announce it, but in 2018 he confessed that his uncle Gene Owens, who conveniently passed away in 2017,
Of course.
he was the one who murdered and dismembered Zebb before burning his remains in the Bent Creek Experimental Forest, which A, what a Forrest name. And B, dismembered and burned.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Weird. That's so
Interesting. And
weird that he
also,
and his uncle are like the same.
yeah,
Because it's not
interesting.
his uncle.
Hmm.
Hmm.
According to this confession, Robert Owens said that he and his uncle Gene were, I guess, meeting up that night or something, and his uncle Gene was hired by a friend of Misty Taylor's abusive boyfriend, Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's interesting to me that it's not just directly from Wesley, it's like a friend of Wesley? Why is the friend hiring
Yeah,
you?
like it's a really good friend. Like what the
Why is
fuck?
the friend? Yeah. Why not just Wesley? Um, yeah, who has the motive, right?
Right.
Um, so, and again, so he and his uncle then pretended to be Misty and lured him out to a nearby forest with that phone call, which is why he sounded panicked and, had to get going, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To hook up with Misty in the forest, which fair
Right.
enough.
Yeah.
And once they're at the forest and they meet him, they then, this is according to Robert,
Mm-hmm.
they then shot him with a rifle and dismembered and burned his body. And conveniently, the friend that he said reportedly hired him, Wesley's friend,
Mm-hmm.
also had died at this point. So he's
So there's
only
nobody to refute
pinning it
these
on dead people.
claims.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's only
smart.
pinning it on dead people.
That makes sense.
So he was allowed, Robert was, to plead to a lesser charge of accessory after the fact. So
Come
they
on.
essentially, the officials here bought this version of the story where he's just helping after the fact with Gene Owens's murder. So essentially, they're taking this at face value.
Which is insane. Why?
Yes. And because he confessed, he, he gets, yeah, like I said, this deal with this lesser charge, but it essentially doesn't matter. It does. It's frustrating on principle, but it doesn't
Right.
matter because he had a life sentence for the deaths of the Shone Cod family.
Right. So it's no
So they're kind of
difference.
also like phoning it in because they know he's never getting out of prison.
Which is also
Um,
weird why he wouldn't just admit it, but he's probably just one of those fucking guys.
he's probably still trying to do fucking appeals and some dumb bullshit too.
Yeah, probably. You're right.
Um, he
Right.
was sentenced to 150 to 189 months, which I think is like, I'm so bad at math. What is that, like 10 years? Just 12
More.
years?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
12 to
like
13 years or something.
yeah, something like that.
And that's going to run concurrently with his current sentence, so it's essentially nothing. This plea deal was discussed extensively with the family, and they were okay with it, I think, probably in large part because there is no body, and
Yeah.
so they didn't stand a huge chance, and they wanted to know some of what happened to him, even if I don't think it's the whole truth.
Right.
But just the confirmation that he was murdered.
Murdered. I
Um,
really
yeah,
it's frustrating because I don't think that's why he was murdered. I think
yeah.
something else happened and there was a
I'll tell
fight
you what
between
happened.
them. Oh,
Yeah.
you,
Well, I'll tell you what happened in my opinion, and
okay.
I stole this opinion from other people who
Okay.
are familiar with the case. I didn't come up with
Okay.
it. With Owens' conviction, it was officially in July of 22. It was declared that Zebb was murdered, despite the fact that no one has ever found his body. It's officially like that he was killed.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of fucking questions that
Yeah.
remain. Did Misty play any role? Was that love triangle anything at all, or is that just fucking bullshit?
I assume
Um,
she's denied it the whole time.
yes.
Okay.
Was there a break into his aunt's house to stage a phone call? Um, you know, what the fuck was that?
Oh, yeah, that
To
is a
the aunt's house,
random.
remember that?
Yeah. Where did the
There's all
dog
these
come
random little
from?
things. Where did the dog come from? Yeah. Yeah. Why did Zebb get a phone call coming from his aunt's home that night?
Yeah.
That was pretending to potentially be Misty.
Right.
Someone broke into his aunt's home to make that phone call. Why did they do that?
Yeah. Like what the fuck?
That's a big question I still have. Who placed the car? Why did they do the lip thing, the lips, the graffiti? Why did
Yeah.
they leave a puppy in the car? Where did the puppy come from, like you said? And what's up with Uncle Gene? Is his involvement real at all?
Yeah.
And a former friend of Robert Owens came out with a story calling him a pathological liar and a
Yeah.
monster and saying he's absolutely full of shit.
Yes. Agree.
And in that article, they talked about how their theory of the murder, which to me sounds a lot more plausible than all this bullshit, is that basically Robert Owens just knew that Zebb had a big fucking amount of cash to buy that car, took him out to the woods,
Right.
fucking shot him and killed him to take the money.
That makes a lot of sense. The
That's it.
thing with the dog is weird. The
Why the
lipstick is
dog?
weird.
Why the lips? And why was Misty seen driving the car?
Maybe she wasn't.
Was
Maybe
she?
he had a wig.
Or maybe it was a false, witness sighting because they can't always be relied upon. I don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely
Um,
possible.
so if that's true, if she was driving his car, that's weird. Or maybe I don't know. Part of me thinks it's possible that the abusive boyfriend did want him to kill Zebb, but just the uncle wasn't in the picture. It was just him.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that is possible, rather than just a simple robbery. Um,
I don't feel like this guy would murder for hire. I feel like he just likes to
yeah,
kill. You know,
yeah,
like
no,
I
that's true because he did the other horrific murders, and in
yeah.
both cases, I think with the Cod family, he's when he said, "Oh, it's like an accident, and I'm covering it
Mhm.
up in this and this and this way,"
Yeah,
like, and he's doing the same move by saying Uncle Gene did it. He's trying to like create this
and I'm
dumb
covering it
bullshit.
up like yeah.
He's making
Mhm.
himself an accessory and not like the main perpetrator in both
Yeah, he's
cases.
consistently like removing himself from like direct
Yes,
responsibility, which is like such
yeah,
a fucking that's like a serial killer tactic.
yes. But
So,
that's the kind of quasi resolution to the case of Zebb Quinn. Regardless, we know that Robert Owens fucking killed him. And judging by this guy's
yes.
MO with the Cod family, it seems like the reason there's no body is because he burned it.
Yeah. Yep.
So that is why.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad you did that one
Also,
because you covered more about it. Because I always, when I was doing it, I was like, oh, I want to do more about this. But
well, I'm
sorry.
glad that you
Also,
did
what?
no, you did more of the shown
I
murders. So
did.
I'm
That
glad
was the
that like
one. Yeah.
it was, yeah, that's a good pairing. And if you want to go back and listen to Cindy's more in-depth coverage of that case, go check out Reality Show Murders.
Yep.
But my last point was I was going to say there's a really good in-depth podcast that a local news station in North Carolina did about this called A Good Kid, the 22-year murder mystery of Zebb Quinn. And they have a full like hour-long interview with Robert James Owens in prison,
Oh,
which
I
I
bet
listened
that's
to
a
some
waste of
of.
time.
It is. He's a piece of shit. I listened to like half of it and I was like rolling my eyes and like so bored because he's just like
He's just
he's not saying anything.
lying.
He's a piece of
Yeah.
shit.
He's just lying. There's nothing there. He just wants
But
somebody to listen to him.
yeah, no, but you can check it out. It's a really good, thorough, in-depth case. And you can hear more. You can hear more about Zebb from his family. Um, I recommend it if you want to hear more. So
Nice. Good to
there you go.
know. Well, geez.
Zebb.
Fucking hell. Okay. Well, that's interesting because my story is a little similar to yours in some ways, and we'll see how. So I'm gonna do the Liknes family murders.
Mm,
Mm-hmm. And I think that's how you say their name. It takes place in 2014 in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I'm just gonna jump right into this story here. Jennifer O'Brien was a happily married mother of three children: 7-year-old Luke, 5-year-old Nathan, and 2-year-old Max. I don't think Max was actually 2 years old at this point. He was somewhere between 1 and 2 years old. She and her husband had met and married in their hometown and stayed close to her parents. So when they started having kids, it was really great because the kids grew up close with their grandparents, so it was nice. They had
yeah,
like the extended family, the support. On June 29th, 2014, Jennifer had brought two of her sons over to see her parents, Kathy and Alvin Liknes, as they had decided to retire and start living half the year in a warmer climate down in Mexico. And beyond that, they were also going to move their primary residence to Edmonton. So they were not going to be living in Calgary anymore. They were not going to be living near them anymore. And it was a big loss for the boys because, these three kids grew up with their grandparents there all the time. So it was really sad, but the kids wanted to spend more time with the grandparents before they left for half the year, and then we're kind of far away the whole time.
yeah,
So it wasn't all three of the kids. 7-year-old Luke, I believe, was somewhere with his dad, and then Jennifer had Nathan and Max with her, right? So on the weekend of June 29th, like I said, Kathy and Alvin were having an estate sale since they were planning to move and they didn't want to take all their stuff with them. They had posted about it, I believe, in the local paper and probably also online, and they got a really big turnout in response. In fact, they had 200 plus people at this estate sale. So this is a big turnout, tons of people at their
Okay.
house.
Okay.
This, yeah, so lots of people came by. Pardon me. This included Jennifer, Max, and 5-year-old Nathan. Nathan, out of all of the kids, was the closest with Kathy and Alvin, and he begged to spend time with them whenever he could.
Mm.
So, yeah, so the family is helping out and staying the whole day. And after the sale was over, Jennifer and the boys decided to stay the night at Nathan's urging because, again, he was super close with his grandparents and always wanted to be with them. So
It's
everybody went
cute.
to, yeah, it's very, very cute. Everybody went to bed around 9 p.m., but just a couple of hours later, like 1 or 2 hours later, Jennifer and Max woke up because Max was having trouble sleeping. Jennifer decided to make the short drive home with Max, but she decided to leave Nathan there because she knew that he would be super upset if he was forced to leave his grandparents' house in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So she leaves him there with the grandparents. She gets home sometime around or after 10 p.m. and calls the following morning to check in to see, when she should come pick Nathan up. When she called, nobody answered, which was apparently super weird, especially as Nathan was there. They would never like leave the house and not tell her. So she got a little worried and she drove over to the house to check in. When she pulled up, she had Max with her and she saw the front door was wide open, but there wasn't anybody like in the doorway to greet her. So this was really weird because why is your front door just wide open? A little strange. She yeah, she got even more worried seeing this and practically ran inside to find a horrifying scene.
Mm.
Instead of her parents and son sitting around having breakfast, she found an empty house covered top to bottom in blood.
Mm.
hmm It was on the floor, on the walls, on the furniture, on family pictures, literally fucking everywhere. She later said the smell was metallic and overwhelming, which is,
Oh
I know,
God.
awful to
Rough.
fucking think about. Yeah. Weirdly, and I don't blame her, but I did find this weird. She calls her husband first and says,
Mm.
"My family has been murdered and he took the bodies." So,
Interesting.
interesting way to put that, and also my
Yeah.
family, like it's their son. But I think she may have just been in hysterics for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Immediately, after calling her husband, she calls the police. When the police arrive, they find the scene, and the first thing they did, which was actually super fucking smart, was they started looking for Nathan, thinking maybe he was hiding, right? Because that will happen. Somebody will come in and attack the adults, and there's a kid, and the kid hides, and the attacker doesn't know the kid's there, right? So they're like, oh, maybe he's just hiding. Unfortunately, this was not the case. The house was entirely empty and just a fucking massacre, had taken place there,
Yeah.
but there no bodies. So, police are investigating. This is it's a missing persons case at this point. But, they had their work cut out for them. Everybody, to be honest, like Jennifer even said later that like from the moment she walked in the house, she knew. She knew what
Yeah.
happened.
Ugh.
But they do treat it as a missing persons case from the start. They
Despite all the
uh
blood.
Yeah, yeah. So apparently,
Yeah.
like, it wasn't obvious that they were dead. I'll
Right.
talk more about. There's actually some really sad indicators of that. Um,
Ugh.
that really are like heart wrenching. But they did believe that at least when they left the house, they were alive. But I think they all kind of thought they were dead because it was just a horrific massacre, right?
Yeah.
Um, but as I had mentioned, over 200 people were at the house for the estate sale just hours before the massacre, which means police need to track down and interview over 200 people, and that's a lot of work. So police did do this, and slowly they marked everybody off their list of suspects, with just a few exceptions. There were about six or so people who were considered suspects. These included a few disgruntled workers who had formerly worked for Alvin, an ex-boyfriend, a guy who had actually shot Alvin's daughter, who is was still alive at this point, but had been like
Wow.
assaulted by him.
Okay.
And a guy named Douglas Garland, the brother-in-law of Alvin's son, Alan.
Okay.
So once police were able to sort of narrow this group down, they looked in more detail at the evidence that they had. This gets pretty gnarly, so just kind of, be forewarned.
Okay.
At the home, the evidence they had was minimal but horrifying. First, the blood on the walls was found to belong to all three family members, including 5-year-old Nathan. As to what caused the amount of blood loss, they also found a couple 45-pound dumbbells, like the kind for
Yeah.
exercising, on site, and both were covered with blood as they had been used to beat the victims.
Okay.
So these victims were all beaten with a heavy barbell.
That doesn't feel like you survived that, or at least you're not in great shape.
Right. It's not a good thing. They're
No.
probably beat unconscious at a minimum, at least for a time.
Yes. Yes.
They found that the house had been broken into by someone who used a drill to get into the house so as not to cause a lot of noise, and that the router and internet had been disabled before the attack began, which I'm wondering if like their phones were attached to the internet somehow. Who knows? They also found that the attack happened between 10 p.m., which is around when Jennifer left, and 7 a.m. when it became light out. So police started looking at the security camera footage of the street because they do have that. They have security camera footage like just outside the house. And they found that there was a green truck that had driven by the house quite a few times during the possible like time frame for the attack. Like I said, they put the Amber Alert out even though they thought Nathan was already dead. And a day or so after that, they put out another call for help from the public. And what they did was they asked the public if they can help identify the owner of this green truck, as it was seen driving in and out during the time frame when the family would have been attacked, basically driving to and from the house. So this is a pretty big lead that they have if they can figure out
Yeah.
who this truck belongs to. Shortly thereafter, a woman named Patty Liknes called the police. Patty was married to Alvin's son, Alan, and her
Okay.
maiden name was Garland.
Mm.
He was Douglas Garland's sister.
Okay.
So she called police and said that not only did Douglas own that truck, but that he and her husband Alan and his father Alvin had had a falling out some months prior to the murders. Alvin, the grandfather, or her father-in-law, was an inventor, which is pretty fucking cool.
That is
And
cool.
yeah, and he had Alan working for him, and Alan had convinced him to hire Douglas to help with the new invention. Now, I think it was basically like Patty and Alan were trying to help Douglas out, help him get work, stay on the straight and narrow, because Douglas Garland had a long history of being a complete piece of shit. He had had trouble with the law for cooking meth previously, and at the time was living with his parents on rural property just outside of town. So he probably didn't have a job. He didn't have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And now Patty, when she called the police, she said the falling out had happened because Douglas had helped with one of the inventions and had made some sort of adjustment to it and felt that he should be given credit on the patent. However, both
Okay.
Alvin and Alan both said they had no intention of giving him credit, as his adjustment was one they would have made either way. And it was basically like somebody has to push that button, and he pushed the button. Then he's like, I should get credit for that. And they're like, not really.
Mm.
Not
Okay.
fucking really. This obviously angered Douglas, who was later fired by Alvin after becoming increasingly difficult to work with. So there's a lot of motive here as to why he
Yeah.
would be angry with Alvin and want to
It's
get rid
kind
of
of
him.
a petty motive, but
It's a very petty motive. It's a very petty motive. But this is a guy who cooked meth, and got in trouble for that. And there's
yeah.
there's more I'll talk about too. So anyway, police used this information to get a search warrant because the truck was an exact match. They also arrested him on an older charge of identity theft that had happened in the 90s, and he had not at this point been arrested for it. So this is insane. He stole the identity of a 14-year-old teenager so that he could evade police after getting busted for cooking meth, and had lived with this fake identity for some time before kind of the heat died down and he went back and lived with his parents. But he had actually stolen a dead child's identity to skirt the authorities. So,
Okay.
yeah, he did this in the
Casual.
90s, and in 2014 they finally arrested him for this. But I think it was in part as a way just to get him, like, in jail and out of their way and get, like, a search warrant. While he was in jail on these charges, police searched his truck and home and they hit pay dirt like big time. In his house, they found a hard drive hidden in the rafters of the attic. And in this hard drive was a ton of fucked up shit. And I'm just going to start with the first things they found, which were a ton of photos of adults wearing nothing but adult diapers and, like, doing sexy things. So
My God. Okay.
there used to be this website, it's probably still around, called Diaper Pail Friends, and it was this stuff. And so this is what this guy was
Um,
into, which, like, I'm not gonna kink shame, but
maybe for this one though, we could.
it's interesting.
I mean,
They also went searching his house, and this is neither here nor there, but it's just of, like, kind of interesting. They found a bunch of women's clothing and women's shoes. He had like 70 pairs of shoes, which, no hate, so do I. But he had a bunch of women's shoes in addition to men's shoes. So it's thought that he was kind of, into different things. So anyway, in addition to these diaper pail friends images, he also had something of a search history on the drive, which I find interesting. Maybe he was, like, downloading articles. But anyway, some of the articles that he had read or looked up were things like how to kill without feeling,
oh,
worst tortures,
oh,
blood dissolving chemicals, how to dispose of bodies, and then beyond that, he had information downloaded, screenshots, about the Liknes's family estate sale. So he knew they
mm,
were moving. He knew about the estate sale. He knew where they lived, obviously. And he knew they were going to move soon. Beyond that, at the house, they found a ton of other evidence, which is super horrifying, including a Tyvek bodysuit, which is like what you use when you're doing, like, chemical shit, or just so you don't
hmm,
get, a bunch of blood on you.
yeah,
Chemical gloves, meaning gloves that can, like, handle chemicals.
mm,
Chloroform, insulin, which you can really fuck somebody up if you, inject them with it.
yeah,
Liquid nitrogen, hacksaws, rubber boots, and
ooh,
finally, in the backyard, kind of out, because it's a rural area, but on the
yeah,
property, they found a burn barrel, which was still
yeah,
smoking
yeah.
and full of ash.
There's why we don't have the bodies.
hmm They
Yep.
went they went through the ash and found bits of bone, one
Hmm.
tooth,
Oh,
and a pair of glasses.
it's so horrifying to me when bodies are completely obliterated like that. Like whether,
Yeah.
yeah, in like a fire or
Well, what's
it's so bad.
interesting is, like, even in this, they were still able to find a tooth and a bunch of bone, and a pair of glasses somehow survived, which is
Yeah,
insane to me.
wow, it is.
Unfortunately, none of this was definitive, but it was enough to arrest him. So he was arrested on 2 counts of first-degree murder, one for Kathy, one for Alvin, and 1 count of second-degree murder for Nathan, because it was believed that he didn't know he was there. Because obviously he researched this, but he didn't expect the 5-year-old to be there. So while he's in prison awaiting trial, which takes a very long time, they kept searching the home. Police did for 10 months, and they found a ton of shit. They found lock picking tools, more knives, more saws, 2 meat hooks,
Mm.
and a charred computer board that matched the missing Liknes family car. They also ran DNA and found DNA from Kathy on the meat hooks, which, like, I don't want to know what the fuck, you know?
This is like a horror movie,
It
like in inventory form,
Yes,
but you can just picture it.
the meat hooks is very like Texas Chainsaw.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
That's the only reference I have for meat hooks in my mind when you say
yeah,
that.
right. And it's about
Yeah.
on par with this.
Yeah.
There was also DNA from all three victims on various hacksaws and on the rubber boots.
Oh my
So
god, did they hang
all
them all
three of
up on
them.
hooks
I don't know. I don't know.
like fucking animals? Like,
I don't know. They dug through the ashes more thoroughly. They found 17 tooth fragments, many more pieces of bone. So they had all of this evidence, right? But they did not have
yeah,
bodies.
but strong evidence that there were bodies.
And we've got motive, we have him on camera, there's obvious
Yeah.
DNA everywhere. But when
Ugh,
Douglas went to trial, he pleaded not guilty.
of course.
And his defense was basically like there's no bodies. But beyond the aforementioned evidence and the motive, prosecutors had another pretty damning piece of evidence up their sleeve, and this helped them prove a murder did happen, or three murders, even though they did not have bodies. What that evidence was, this is so crazy. It was aerial photography that happened to be taken by a man flying over the area on July 1st and 2nd. Now, this family was killed overnight between June 29th and June 30th, and their bodies were probably burned like July 2nd. So he took the bodies, and eventually, burned them. So this man was flying over the Garland farm, like the Garland home that day. And he was paid to do this, just to take like aerial photos of the land, like for mapping or for
Yeah.
whatever. So he happened to be flying over the Garland
Mm,
farm that day. His camera took photos every 3 seconds. And in many of these photos were what looked very much like the outline of three bodies wrapped in
mm.
sheets laying in
Oh
a
my
field.
god.
There was another photo that showed a shadowy kind of figure standing over the burn barrel with those same kind of wrapped up bodies nearby.
Mm,
And the timing of these photos is so unreal. Like, how likely is it that like Google Maps is gonna fucking get a photo of you like committing a crime? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
wow.
especially out in like rural Alberta, Canada, like what the
Yeah.
fuck? So
I don't know if there's enough, but it would be a killer list to do, like, murders caught on Google Earth,
oh
on
my
Google
god.
Maps.
That would be I know, I mean, we could talk about Israel Keys. He was a
Yeah,
murderer who was seen on the map,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, how fucking crazy is it that they
That's
fucking caught
insane.
this, right? So the prosecutors had all this evidence, and what they laid out as most likely to have happened was this: that Douglas entered the home sometime after 10 p.m. by drilling through a side door. He cut the router wires and turned off the internet. He then attacked Alvin, who was sleeping alone in the main bedroom, bludgeoning but not killing him, but probably knocking him unconscious. He then went into the guest room where he found Kathy sleeping with Nathan, which he was not expecting. He attacked them
Mm,
both, showing no mercy for the 5-year-old because, if Nathan was left alive, he could identify him. So
mm,
he beat all of them and then took the injured victims out of his truck while they were out to his truck while they were still alive. They know that they
yeah.
were still alive because they found the handprint of 5-year-old Nathan
Mm,
sliding against the wall on the way out the door as if he was grabbing at the door trying
oh
to pull himself back inside.
god, that's gruesome. This little boy is so cute
I
too.
know. He really is. And it is
God,
so fucking gruesome. He then took
Jesus.
them to his property, to his barn, where he tortured them all, probably
Mm,
for hours, before killing them. I cannot and do not want to imagine what this little boy was
no.
dealing
Like,
with in his
that's
last
it's so over the
moments.
top for the dumbest, pettiest motives. Like,
Dumbest, pettiest, fucking insane.
yeah.
Yeah,
Ugh,
yep. He then wrapped and burned the bodies, hacking them into pieces so they would fit in the barrel. And that's it. The defense basically tried to say no body, no crime, but it's like, bro, come on. That's pathetic.
yeah.
On on February 16th, 2017, jurors took what is kind of staggering to me, a staggering 9 fucking hours
Wow.
before finding him guilty on all counts. And I truly believe that is because there were no bodies, that they took
Yeah,
so long. But they
for
did
sure.
come back with guilty on all counts.
Yeah.
The murder of Nathan was actually upgraded to first degree because it's thought that he was alive when he was taken from the house. So that
Mm,
automatically,
he had a chance to not kill
yeah,
him,
had
essentially.
he
Yeah.
killed him in the heat of the moment in the house, it may have stayed second degree, but he did not. So he's given 3 life sentences with no chance for parole for 75 years, which is great. In 2021, Douglas here, who has never said a word about the murders, not one
I
fucking
hate that. I
word.
kind of hate that.
I hate it so much.
Ugh.
He attempted to appeal his sentence, but was unsuccessful, and he
Mm-hmm.
remains in prison to this day. Nathan's mother and father both gave victim impact statements at the trial. I don't want to talk about it, but basically, like, Nathan was the middle brother. So both of his brothers, including his
Yeah,
older brother, who was 7 at the time. So
you can
definitely
imagine
aware,
the impact.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nathan was, I guess, apparently obsessed with superheroes. And barely even wore normal clothes because all he wanted to wear was like superhero costumes. So yeah, pretty fucking sad. Just a really sweet, normal 5-year old. What a fucking horrific end. So I'm very, very glad that Douglas Garland is in prison. I find it really interesting that both his sister, who turned him in, and his parents testified against him in his trial. Apparently he is like a very not good dude. So glad he's
Wow. Well,
yeah,
what an asshole.
yeah. Pretty fucked up, right?
Yes,
Pretty rough.
that he is a monster. That's really disturbing. It also reminds me very much of the McStay family murders,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the business associate. Yeah.
Yes.
Fucking horrible. That's a
Bludgeoning
terrible
the
case too.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. People just are
People
they're
do
just
insane
so
shit for dumb reasons.
dead inside. Like to be able to do
Yeah.
something like this, you have to have like no soul. Like nothing.
Yeah.
There's just nothing there. So
No.
wild. Ugh. All right, guys, there's round one.
Yeah. On that
Coming
note.
at you with part two very soon. Yeah, hopefully my next one does not have children. Did you highlight this case for me? Because it was bolded, but like I didn't bold it.
Oh, I changed it because I always highlight. So I was being petty because I was like, no, I highlight, don't I?
No, I meant did you bold it for me? Because it was bolded.
No, you had bolded it, and then I just changed the format. I just
Oh, because I was like, I
it was
don't remember picking this case.
oh no, you don't have to pick it. I just thought it was bolded. I thought you bolded it.
I didn't. So I ended up doing this case, this horrible
Oh,
fucking case about a
I'm
5-year-old
sorry.
being torture murdered because somehow it got bolded.
Oh,
So
the like this one. Okay, yeah.
yes,
I wonder.
yeah, the Liknes
Oh,
case. I
oh,
didn't
oh, oh.
choose it. I don't know how it
No,
ended up chosen.
I, I thought it just was bold. Okay, honestly, maybe at 3 a.m. I was sleep deprived and I highlighted
And you
it,
highlighted it and you bolded
and
it.
I
Yeah,
forgot that I did.
I don't know,
But
but
okay.
it was so funny. I was like, maybe Diva's giving me a note that she wants me to do this one, and then I started reading about it, and I was like, this is
Oh
so
my god.
fucked up.
Well, it worked out, even though this
It
is not
worked
a
out.
case you would normally pick.
No, it's not. So hopefully
I'm
the
sorry.
next one will be less horrifying.
Oh my
Anyway,
gosh.
thanks guys. Please like, rate, review, share with your friends and family. And until the next half,
Stay.
off our
Liz.
lists.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mom.